Today's April the 4th, 2022. It is 5:04 a.m. This is my name is Arrington-Bey, Hebrew Muslim Moorish Descent. And first I'm going to be reading from Moorish literature. Let me fix this. There you go. Okay. The Prophet has spoken. All governors and grand sheikhs and head officials that guide any body of Moors of any temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America, he or she must be of good moral standard, and the heart of love, and their works must be of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. They are to imitate the Prophet in speech and teaching in any set temple. They must not be under the influence of intoxicating liquors or any other harmful motive that will terminate to become detrimental to the organization. It must not be known that any leader is staying away from home or neglecting his duty at home, or must allow the public to know of their wrongdoings. They must forever live the life of love at home. It must be known by all the members. They must not speak rash words, nor any profane language in the mindset form to any other individual, because a leader without influence of good works cannot be a leader. And to be a real Moorish leader, you must study the Quran and the divine constitution that is handed down unto you by I, the Prophet. No finance business is to be opened with any group of members of any temple by the governor or grand sheikh of whosoever is in charge without the consultation of I, the Prophet. All uplifting funds, books, are to be issued only through I, the Prophet, because the money is to finance the Moorish movement. The head of any temple can maintain an emergency fund, which cannot exceed the amount of 25 cents to 50 cents a week per member. All public collections and dues also to the supporting of each said temple and its domestic work. No finance books are to be served in any temple except by the Prophet. The head of every temple must by law obey the word of the Prophet. And if any leader or head of any temple fails to obey these laws, embezzlement is his charge, and is subject to enforcement of the law by the grand body. And the penalty may be a fine or a removal from office, or placed under a very heavy restriction of the law. Supreme words of the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Next one to read, think this over, you Moors. All sheikhs, great sheikhs, must prepare for the Prophet before he comes to visit them. Must see to it that all is clean and in perfection as far as comfort is possible, or otherwise don't arrange to have his presence. All members must pay from 25 cents to 50 cents weekly towards the emergency fund. This fund will increase so that it will soon amount to the grand sum of $1,000. That is, if you are loyal Moors. The emergency fund goes into the bank. The treasurer will tend to the responsibility of seeing that the money is in the bank. Yes, and under the name of the Moorish Science Temple of America, finance, when needed, act according to the law pertaining to the procedure of performing an emergency act. No head of any said temple is to borrow from any member more than $5 to $10 unless by notification of the Prophet. The necessity for the loan. When any said temple desires to purchase property, they must first notify the grand body or the Prophet, and it must be purchased under the name of the Moorish Science Temple of America or Noble Drew Ali. An individual name must never be applied. I, Noble Drew Ali, am responsible for all finance, so therefore let I, the Prophet, know what is on me. Some of you have slipped drastically, so you had better lace up your shoes before I get there. Every business transaction or anything pertaining to finances to be transacted in the name of the Moorish Science Temple of America or Noble Drew Ali. We Moors must maintain a grand treasurer, just as in the days of our forefathers. Then you are a nation. Until then, you are nothing. The emergency fund is issued by no book, but by an emergency card punched according to the contribution, then marked on book. That is the law. And the law must live. The government is behind me, and I must get behind you, for I must uphold and enforce the law. My mission is to save you, Moors. The heads of all temples, grand sheiks, must conform to the divine principles love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. They must live the life among the members and be loved even as the prophet is loved. They must not practice the principle of segregation among any group in his or her temple. Let it be he or she that is head of any temple of the More Science Temple of America, that if there should come any grievance that cannot be settled by the head, notify the prophet at once. No members to attend a depth chamber that has not lived a moral and clean life, and has not paid his or her dues or assessments, providing that he or she is working or able, cannot consider himself a Moor. But traitors must be excluded from the books after having fair trial by the head of their temple, and that must be sent into the grand body. And all members that are able and fail to act are not Moors, but traitors to their cause and trust and their nation, and are not allowed to share all the Moorish honors. And the penalty is, it is embezzlement of the faith of our creed. All heads of the temples must observe these laws by the prophet. So next I'm going to read chapter 48 of the Surah 7 Quran. The end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. The last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways, and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nation of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under his own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Holy Temple of Science of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed, for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations, as it was prepared for their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God Allah, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Come all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all the true and divine prophets. Islam.
Do you know any one person here? Make sure you announce that every video. You want to great video of one person here. But I treat everyone. I treat those that I coexist with in Annapolis with respect and values. You need to say that, honey. You don't know one person here.
I, Myers Arrington-Bey, do not know anyone personally here in Annapolis, Maryland, but I treat everyone here with respect.
Yes, ma'am. Your nationality is Moorish American.
My nationality is Moorish American.
That's good, honey. Go ahead and do it, though. What was your
So,
son?